One last step, completely optional, but that will serve to introduce an interesting concept, consists of adding textures to our character. This will enrich the colors of our character and make it look less flat and, in some way, less digital. There's nothing wrong with working with flat colors, but adding paper or watercolor textures to our character can make it more pleasant to the eye and more organic. To add a texture to our character, the first thing we have to do is find a texture we like. You can use Google or any other image search engine you know. Platforms like Pixabay.com offer royalty-free image galleries that you can use for your projects. In my case, I went to Pixabay.com, searched for paper watercolor texture, and selected one that I thought was interesting for my project. This one, for example. Ideally, we should choose images with good resolution so they don't get pixelated or look blurry when we manipulate them on our canvas. But, as an example, this one will do. Once we have found the image we like, we can simply copy it with Ctrl+C and paste it into our workspace by pressing Ctrl+V. Now, with the transform tool, we have to make sure that the texture covers the entirety of our character so that the character is not visible and is completely covered by the texture. Now, we can introduce a very interesting concept that has multiple applications, the concept of clipping layers. Before I explain how it works, let's try it directly by clicking on this icon here, in the layer panel, the clip to layer below icon. Interesting, right? Clipping layers makes the layers visible only in the same regions as the immediately inferior layer or group of layers. It's important to understand that this function does not crop or erase information from the layer. The layer is still there, intact. We can verify this with the Move tool by moving the layer to one side or the other, or simply by deactivating the Clip to Layer Below option by clicking the same icon. This vertical red line informs us that the layer is being applied as a clipped layer and will disappear if we deactivate the Clip to Layer Below option. It is also important to take into account that this function only references the immediate inferior layer or group of layers. Let's see what happens if I put this layer above the inking layer. As we can see, the layer is being applied only to the inking layer, and it doesn't affect the flat color layer we have below. To solve this, we have two options. We can place the layer right above the flat color layer, or we can put all the layers into a group and place the texture immediately above. In any case, for the texturing effect to be applied correctly, we must change the blending mode of the layer. Maybe this is a good time to play with this drop-down menu and see what effects each option achieves. There are many, and some of them offer very interesting possibilities, but honestly, I think the best and perhaps only way to understand how they work is to spend a few minutes playing with them and observing their effects. To apply textures, I usually choose the overlay or soft light options, which, as you can see, have quite similar effects. In any case, I always reduce the opacity value quite a bit until the texturing effect is barely perceptible. Once again, I believe that less is more, and that working subtly in small increments achieves better results. Finally, you can also use the Ctrl+U command on the texture layer to modify the luminosity, color, and saturation parameters, and adjust the texture to the color and tone of your character. Essentially, I always try to use texture colors that enrich the colors I have used as flat colors, but that are not too different. In this case, for example, I am interested in achieving reddish, pinkish, bluish, or purple tones, which chromatically are harmonious with the ones I have used. Colors like yellow or green, for example, would create dissonance and break the chromatic harmony. In any case, Since it is very easy to try several options by simply manipulating these sliders, I invite you to entertain yourself for a while with them and experiment with the results obtained. When you're done, you might decide that your character looked better without the texture. If that's the case, there's no problem. Delete the layer, save your project, and congratulations! You have finished your first project. If you are satisfied with the result, you can continue to the next section of the course. If you think you need more practice, I recommend that you repeat this first section, or at least those parts that you found most complex. Keep in mind that this is actually a fairly quick process once you know and master the right tools. The process of sketching, inking, and coloring a head like this can be completed in 15 or 20 minutes. Therefore, do not be afraid of repeating this tutorial once or several times. In fact, it is something I personally recommend. Try to practice with different references or try to repeat the same exercise using the same reference. You will surely learn new things. In any case, in the next section we will apply everything we have learned in this first part of the course to draw other elements related to the design and creation of characters, the anatomy of the human body, male and female, clothing and accessories. Throughout this process, I will reveal all the tricks and techniques that I use daily in my professional projects. So, when you're ready, I'll see you in the next section of the course.